Welcome back to Walsall Fan TV. There's a lot of sackings going on. Paul Hurst lost his job at Shrewsbury. I nearly forgot it was then. And Mark Robbins, of course, Coventry. Lots of changes. We're going to talk to Gab Sutton. He's the knowledge of the EFL. Paul Hurst getting the sack. I think maybe more people expected that. Mark Robbins, it's been a revelation, hasn't he, for Coventry? What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's a worrying, I think, a little bit for Coventry in that they've made that decision. I think a lot of fans feel quite disillusioned with the club making that decision, given how popular a manager Mark Robbins is. My best guess is that there's maybe a difference of opinion between Doug King and Mark Robbins and how they want to move forward, because Mark Robbins has done his best work kind of as very much the manager with a lot of operational autonomy in terms of how he runs the club, and maybe Coventry City want to go toward more of a sporting director head coach model, and I don't know whether Robbins was necessarily on board with that. So I can, logically there's some sort of sense to what Doug King decided, but I think that there's a massive cost to that in terms of the feeling and the impact on the supporters, and I think there's a lot of healing for the fans at the moment.
It's not very often a manager gets the sack when the fans are fully behind him. So that's maybe their form this season. Maybe something has been rumbling, and that's sort of causing the problem. So I think you've probably got a point there. Obviously, this is Walsall Fan TV channel. We do get worried because in 2015 we were going really well, and then Brentford pulled our super ginger Mourinho out. So do you think Walsall need to worry that Matt Sadler will get pulled away?
Not for Coventry, I don't think. I think Matt Sadler's having a great season so far. We may talk about it. I'm not sure that he's quite at the stage where there'll be championship jobs for him, but he's certainly doing a great job at the moment. But I'm not sure that I would imagine Coventry making the decision to go for him just yet.
Yeah, I think he's sort of. Some people would say perhaps he hasn't achieved anything yet, but I mean he's obviously setting the groundwork and he's doing very well. He's got links with Shrewsbury and lives in Shrewsbury, so perhaps that would be a more likely pull. But how would a manager want to jump out of a promotion campaign in League Two for a struggling team in League One who's likely to be dropping down?
Sure, there's the geographical aspect here, which probably would work in Matt's favour, but I think the fact that you've got a real opportunity to put promotion on your CV with Walsall as opposed to a relegation with Shrewsbury, because I do think there's a likelihood that Shrewsbury go down this year. So you could take the Shrewsbury job and be in League Two, and then Walsall are in League One. So. But the other thing I would say to that is, for me, in terms of ownership regimes, I would have a lot more trust in Ben Boycott and that Walsall are onto a good thing under the current ownership regime than I would have that in sort of Roland Whiteley, who's current Shrewsbury owner, who's sort of 82 years old, and really Shrewsbury are a club that need fresh impetus. And we don't know where that's going to come from yet. So I think Walsall have much more of a set path under Trevella. I think based on the position of Walsall in the table, but also the structure at the club, even somebody like I think it's Ben Sadler, who's CEO, very highly rated in his time at Walsall.
Yeah, been very impressed with Ben.
Yeah, exactly. I think these are sort of things that Shrewsbury don't have that same structural security, I wouldn't suggest. So, I'd be very confident that Walsall are on the right track and that they're the place to be for Matt Sadler right now.
Occasionally people will get pulled with the lure of the dollar or the lure of the lira, as they say. But Matt Sadler's a very sensible very measured person. I can't think that he would be easily swayed by that. I think as a fairly young manager, getting a promotion on your CV, it's still early days for the season for Walsall, but getting a promotion on your CV is a massive thing. Is a massive thing for future stability. And obviously, what's going on with Walsall at the minute, as you say, the structure of the club is better than it's been for a very long time.
I also think, just to add to that, Simon, having the first promotion on your CV as a manager is a massive thing, because that can set you up for the rest of your career, and that's something that you can point to and say, I achieved that. And especially when you're looking for other jobs and any situation down the line, having a promotion on your CV is massive. Whereas I think Shrewsbury are in such an uncertain position that I'm not sure you necessarily want to make that jump.
Yeah, I think with Dean Smith, he hadn't really achieved the promotion, but I mean he had done very well with Walsall.
Yeah.
When a championship club comes knocking, and obviously Brentford had got plenty of money, hadn't they?
Well, it was more the strategy, I suppose, with Brentford, wasn't it? Because they, I don't think they had loads of external investment, but they had a very smart plan to sort of develop players and sell them on and all that kind of thing. And that was possibly a bit more strategically than Walsall could offer at the time, because it wasn't Ben Boycott at the time, Ben.
No.
Dean Smith left. It was it was Banks, the guy who was there for 30. Bonser, thank you. Yeah, thank you. There you go. So it was Bonser, who was Jeff Bonser, who was owner for 30 odd years, wasn't he? But wasn't especially popular with Walsall fans, was he, Jeff Bonser? So
not at all. It's come out since Dean Smith had sort of said that the budget had been reduced every year, the playing budget continually being reduced. And so I think Dean Smith knew that he was getting as much out of Walsall as he possibly could. And so the opportunity to move, you can't blame him really, to move with somebody who's a bit more forward thinking at the time. But it's very different with Matt Sadler now, because he's with a club that are more forward thinking. And as we've said, there's great credit to Ben Sadler. He's been a breath of fresh air really, such as for the FA Cup first round game against Bolton, where he introduced a special offer. So it was just £10 a ticket, £5 for juniors, which I can't imagine any other. I can't imagine Bonser of doing that. But it's the best first round attendance was like 6,500, 6,600 for a first round FA Cup tie than Walsall have, I think, ever had, from what's been said.
Isn't it?
So he's a young guy, Ben Sadler. But he's got some really good ideas. And
do you feel, let me ask you then, Simon, are you confident that the club's on an upward trajectory? Because that's something that I felt for the last 2 or 3 years, even when it hasn't shown necessarily results on the pitch. I've always felt that in terms of things upstairs, that you're kind of on the right track.
I think so. One thing that a friend of mine, Adam, always says is judge us in January. And sometimes we get to January, if we're doing well, players leave, they get pulled away, and if we're struggling, we'll maybe bring a few players in. But sort of like the real desire to achieve things is revealed by January. At the recent fans forum, they all made it clear. Ben Boycott, Ben Sadler, and Lee Pomlett all made it clear that Walsall are not in a position where we need to sell any player. But they put the caveat in that if somebody comes in with a crazy offer, they'd be mad not to consider it. Because we've got a couple of players who've sparkled this season and have taken a lot of the awards, as it were. Connor Barrett has been outstanding, and Jamie Jellis, but they're both on long-term contracts with Walsall. So
lovely.
A little in the olden days when Bonser was around, if somebody had come along with 30 grand, he'd have said, "Yeah, have them."
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen anymore. And because we're doing longer contracts for players, that sort of builds that stability. And the connection Matt Sadler has with the team is another massive thing.
Yeah. Long-term contracts are great from a point of view of planning, doesn't it? Because it's like, you know, that you're either going to have that player or you're going to get a massive amount of money for them, barring injury or something like that. So it's brilliant in terms of long-term planning. So yeah, great that the clubs are in that position.
It is a risk. It is a risk for a club, for a small club, that you can sort of get a player on a long-term contract if things don't work out. So it is a gamble, but if you get a player on a 1-year contract and they do great stuff and then disappear, all your work's gone to nothing, hasn't it?
Yeah,
all your work's gone to nothing. Yeah, something that hasn't been sort of portrayed too much in the media, which I was quite surprised by. It's something that I think Phil, that was on my fan reaction after the Bolton game, 10 minutes to play. Harry Williams, who's been excellent for us.
Oh yeah, do you know what? I really like Harry Williams. He looks very cultured, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's done very well. Well, he sort of sprinted to the touchline to clear a ball, and fell and banged his head and had a head injury. Well, the first person to him was Matt Sadler. So Matt Sadler's run sort of like 30 yards, and he's the first person on the scene, and that tells you what's going on at Walsall. There's a togetherness, and that's what Matt Sadler's sort of pulled together, and that's that's nice to see. That's nice to see.
Yeah. Simon, can I ask you then? Do you feel like I think I came on this podcast a few times last season, and I think we both asked a few questions of Matt Sadler. Do you feel like he's been vindicated a little bit with the form that we're seeing this season and what he's delivering?
Absolutely. Last season, I was sort of on the fence for a long time, and then fell off the fence in some ways and said, okay, maybe it's time to go. But sometimes we don't see what's happening behind the scenes and how things are building. The story I had when on my Walsall Fan TV Insights, I had a chat with Graham Deakin, former player, who's now an agent of Taylor Allen. Right. And under the previous manager, Taylor Allen had been frozen out of the team. And Graham Deakin, his agent, said, just keep your head down, keep doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and a break will come for you. And he was out of contract in the summer, but Matt Sadler saw the effort that he put in when he wasn't involved in the team, and he gave him a contract based on his commitment and his professionalism.
Yeah.
And obviously he's repaying that because he's doing fantastic for Walsall at the minute.
Sounds very culture led. Then it feels like Matt Sadler's got everybody on the fighting for the same cause, which is always what you want, and then you always give yourself the best chance when you've got that kind of togetherness, isn't it?
Yeah, there was an interview that the Yellow Ribbon podcast did with Isaac Hutchinson, and Isaac Hutchinson was talking about the difference between the two managers, having been under Mike Flynn and under Matt Sadler. And Mike Flynn was a sort of, you come up after a bad performance, and Mike Flynn is sort of saying, that was shit, what you're doing, sort of thing, sort of sort yourself out. Where Matt Sadler was like, don't worry about it, let's go on, what was the problems, and he's sort of much more caring, sharing attitude rather than the wham bam, thank you, ma'am, which works with some players. It's about the balance, isn't it? And if you've got the right kind of players in that respond, and that's where recruitment's important. You bring in players in who respond to that caring, sharing, togetherness approach, where perhaps others need that kick up the backside. So
it's a balance, isn't it? But I think on the whole, I would say you want to lean towards the Matt Sadler side of the spectrum, which is I think most players possibly need more of an arm around the shoulder, and they might need the occasional nudge. But I think when you go over, too far in the sort of recrimination sort of side of the spectrum, then that can be a problem in terms of motivating players.
I think managing in any manager role is tough, and obviously with the urgency and the focus on football, it's an incredibly tough job. Richard Grice has made a comment. Gab mentioning Walsall and promotion in the same sentence. Shock horror.
I know. Yeah, it's like 2016 all over again.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not. Hopefully we're gonna keep going and we'll be fine. Adi Vivash, he's been a big miss to Coventry, obviously. Do you think that's a big contribution to
definitely. Yeah, Adi Vivash is a very highly rated coach. There was another one, I think, called Dennis Lawrence. Certainly somebody Lawrence. I'm not sure whether his first name was Dennis or I've got that mixed up. Sorry, Coventry fans will have. But yeah, so where was I? Vivash has been Mark Robbins' right-hand man for the last 7 years. And I think because of the way Mark Robbins works, which is kind of overseeing things, and Vivash has been the one on the coaching field, it's kind of understandable that when Vivash is gone and replaced by coaches coming up from the academy, it's probably not going to be quite to the same level, and maybe that's been reflected in the results. So yeah, Vivash I think is an excellent coach, and I can see why Coventry have missed him.
Comment also from the Abandoned Hunter about Dean Smith. Brentford doubled his wages and more, which probably more than doubled his wages, I would think. But I think it was the opportunity to really progress as a manager with a more forward-looking club at that time. But I think he's probably.
How do you feel about the Dean Smith decision nowadays? Because there was a lot of, I think a lot of fans were unhappy with it. I remember being at a game shortly after Dean Smith left, and there were people who they'd sing Sean O'Driscoll's Barmy Army, and then people would finish it off by saying "F off Dean Smith." And slightly ironic now because Sean O'Driscoll didn't work out so well, did it? But I wonder, has time and the fact that Dean Smith has since gone on to do so well with Brentford and manage in the Premier League and have the career that he's had that he might not have had without making that decision, is there a bit more, and maybe some of the things or some of the imperfections of the way Walsall run have come a bit more to light? Is there a bit more sympathy, do you think, for how?
Yeah, I think it's always raw with fans when something's just happened, particularly the way Walsall had been going so well. And having that upturn and that chance of a promotion sort of messed up, really. It was strange. Sean O'Driscoll had been sort of touted as he's the guy we need. He's the guy we need. Every time Walsall had a new manager, Sean O'Driscoll was the guy that was sort of touted around. But when he took over, the way Walsall were playing, he didn't want to change it. And when things started to go wrong, he just didn't know what to do. He just didn't have enough time, really.
Yeah, well, he didn't have the people skills of Dean Smith as well, did he?
No.
I would think he's a very quiet guy, whereas with Dean Smith, you wouldn't say Dean Smith's a loud person necessarily, but he's got very good people skills, very personable, isn't he? So that always makes a difference. And I think that's a lot of what management is. I think if you've not got that ability to lead people, then you're probably going to come a cropper, a bit like what we've been talking about really with Matt Sadler.
I think it's the technical knowledge. Technical knowledge is great, but if you haven't got the character to put it across in a way that people understand and people buy into, then you're in trouble, aren't you? I had a chat recently with Dan Watson. Dan Watson was the goalkeeping coach last season at Walsall, and it was a big shock when he left. And there was a few rumblings around that, and I think rightfully so, because it wasn't communicated very well. But I had a very interesting chat with him, and it was his decision to sort of step away. The intensity of the Tuesday, Saturday with a young family had sort of bared down on him, and he knew that he was sort of perhaps almost making a mistake stepping away from football because he needed that break. But what was particularly interesting, during the conversation I had with him, he had a phone call, and it was from Matt Sadler. So the connection with Matt Sadler had continued, and the relationship with Matt Sadler had continued. It wasn't a live recording, so Matt Sadler hadn't sort of realised it was going live and joined in. So I recorded separately. But so that's another evidence that Matt Sadler is really a very good people person. And when I had a chat with him, when I saw him in Shrewsbury, we were not going through a great time when I saw him. And he was like, so it's water off a duck's back. I sort of got a process I'm sticking with, and the sort of the building process. And that's what he talks about now on all his press conferences. It's all sort of about sort of working hard and keeping the intensity and playing the way they want to play. So it's all good. Obviously, it's still early season, but Walsall have made a good start. Got some tough games coming up. Crew on Saturday. Crew have kicked themselves into gear big style, haven't they, recently?
They have, yeah. They've been solid defensively this season. They've got a back three of Knight Labelle, who they got on loan from Bristol City, Mickey Demetriou, who was one of the top defenders in League Two last season, and they've also got Zach Williams, who's a really exciting Welsh talent, kind of came through a couple of years ago. Very sort of ball-playing left-footed defender who could be one to watch. He's had a bit of a renaissance this season. So those three should be pretty solid, and it's whether Walsall can find a way through that.
The guy I picked out was Ryan Cooney, the right wing back. He's done good, similar to how Connor Barrett's done, really. So that's sort of the tale of the two wing backs.
Yeah, I think Connor Barrett's got a higher long-term ceiling maybe than Ryan Cooney. I think he's a bit more of a complete wing back. I think Cooney's a good technical player. He got a couple of assists for Shiloh Tracy a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? But I think for me, what I love about Connor Barrett, Simon, is the fact that he can fly up and down the flank, and he provides some good deliveries. But the fact that he's strong going forward doesn't mean that he's not good defensively, because I think he is as well. So I think we're looking at a really exciting wing back who's going to make some big moves in English football over the next few years.
Yeah, and of course the guy next to him in the midfield, Jamie Jellis from Tamworth. When we signed him, I saw somebody from saw a Tamworth fan, and he was saying, "Oh, Jamie Jellis, you're going to love him."
Well, that's the interesting thing, Simon, because I think when he signed, you already had loads of midfielders, didn't you? I think I'm right in saying. So it was almost quite hard to get excited about Jamie Jellis because you had so many players. But this season,
play him is the thing, yeah.
This season he seems to have really had his opportunity, maybe through Isaac Hutchinson leaving and things like that.
Yeah. Well, because you got to bear in mind, George Hall is not getting a start for us.
Yeah, surprised.
Because George Hall, obviously, he's sort of had fitness concerns and that sort of thing. When he came on against Bolton, looked very good, actually. He played sort of last 10 minutes or so. There's still good quality that aren't making it onto the pitch at the minute, which is what you want.
What do you think you're going to need in January then, Simon, if we're saying can Walsall make that final push to try and finish in the top three, or can we at least make sure we finish in the top seven? You know, what's this squad needing, do you think, to make sure it lasts the course?
That's a very good question. I think with the squad we currently got, I think if we keep the squad together, I think top three.
I think, should I tell you what I think, Simon? I think you maybe need a bit more depth up top. Because at the moment, from what I can gather, you've got Jamil Matt, you've got Nathan Lowe, who's been brilliant, but then Danny Johnson seems to be a bit out of favour with Matt Sadler. And then, unless there's a few players that are injured, I don't think you've got an awful lot of other.
We've got Josh Gordon, he's been out injured. He's not the goal scorer. Right, Ray's Cleary.
Ray's Cleary,
He's sort of teetering on the edge of the subs bench. So we haven't seen the best of him yet because he's been starved of attention, really, or of game time. But maybe one more striker. Jamil Matt has been excellent so far this season, and keeping him fit.
But is he going to be able to start every game between now and the end of the season, though, Simon? That's the thing.
Maybe not. But DJ, Danny Johnson, is improving and is getting more game time now. So I think he did have some injuries, some issues, but I think we've seen the back of those now, and he's not back at fully fit. But you can see now when he's coming on last 15, 20, he's looking sharper, he's looking fitter, and he's helped us out with a few goals as well. So it's one of those. It's one of those for Matt Sadler to manage. Maybe another striker. Yeah, perhaps. But of course, it's keeping everybody happy, isn't it? That's the challenge.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important. And I say what Matt Sadler's been on about is the togetherness of the whole squad, not just the first 11, and people knowing when they can come in. It's a big moment now on Saturday because Donovan Daniels is back in for Harry Williams because, of course, with a concussion, he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. So how well Donovan Daniels slots back in is one there. Ryan Stirk went off with sickness on Saturday, so Charlie Lakin filled in tremendously well at CDM, and which gave Jack Earing more minutes. So there's plenty of options there. I think as long as we don't have a massive lot of injuries, I think we'll be okay. We've got cover at right wing back with Albert Adoma. We've got cover at left wing back with Evan Weir, and then of course Ronan Mayer. We thought it'd be his breakthrough season, and he's not really had many minutes yet.
Yeah, I keep thinking it's going to be Ronan Mayer's breakthrough season, but he's never quite been able to get through, has he? So yeah, fingers crossed. Is he going to get a National League loan in January? Do you think? Because it feels such a shame for a lad of his talent to be not. I
think it's possible. It's possible. I think in some ways I wouldn't be surprised if he went to a League Two loan, perhaps. But I think probably somewhere like Tamworth on loan would be a good move for him.
Yeah, I think if you're in Tamworth, geez, that would be a great signing. Somebody
or
like
Solihull Moors, of course, or Solihull
Moors.
Moors.
Yeah, Moors, yeah, sure.
So either of those two from January to the end of the season would make sense. If he's not getting the minutes at Walsall, but if we've got George Hall for the whole season, you can understand why he's ahead of Ronan Mayer with 40 odd championship games under his belt. If he's fit.
Although what I would say though is that if George Hall has a great season, that obviously helps you on the field, but he's not then a saleable asset. Whereas if Ronan Mayer was to have a brilliant season for Walsall, it would make a massive difference to the value of the squad, because you'd be able to sell him. If you had him on a 3-year contract, you could sell him for 7 figures or 6 figures, but with a percentage and that kind of thing. So that's those are the things that you always weigh up as a club. But no, you seem to be on the right track. So I'm really excited to see what you can do for the rest of the season. And best of luck at Crewe at the weekend.
Finally, who are you tipping for winning League Two?
Notts County.
I think we did have Gillingham at one point, but Gillingham seem to have capitulated, don't they? Think Notts County will do it then?
I think so, because I think they're a more complete side than last season. Last year they were great going forward and awful at the back. This year they've made some steps to become more resolute, and they've still got, without really compromising their style of play and how they go about things. So Notts County I'm very sweet on this season.
Okay, and not Port Vale then?
I think Port Vale definitely get top 7 for sure.
Yeah, okay. Nice one, Gab. Good to catch up with you. We'll have you back on the channel soon. Have a good old chit chat. But
cheers, Simon. Enjoying the pain.
For the minute, we still feel for Mark Robbins. Definitely not a great decision, I don't think, to get rid of him. But as you say, other things going on in the club could have contributed to that. But great chat. Join the pain.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. Tom.